Hi, I'm Phil Reynolds and I'm the CEO of DevStride. Today I'm going to walk you through a few of the core capabilities of our system and talk a little bit about some of the larger problems that we're trying to solve for customers. Let's jump right in. Number one, you'll see right here in DevStride, there are a section of modules. We have workstream management, boards, Gantt charts, bulk item editing, reporting, automations, and then settings. And let's just jump right in with the workstream management in the portfolio. And the way that this is set up allows you to map out your agile hierarchy. So you'll see here in the example I'm using our own DevStride instance to demonstrate the capabilities of the system. We use our own system to build our system. And here you'll see, for example, we use the idea up top of a module, and a module, in our case Gantt charts, then break down into capabilities. We have Gantt roadmaps, we have Gantt scenarios, then Gantt roadmaps breaks down into a bunch of epics that are assigned out in various program increments. And down below here, you'll see that under this program increment PI9, Gantt enhancements, that we had 3 stories and 3 defects that arose. And so we allow you to map out an agile hierarchy in a very clear and concise portfolio. And that's something that's relatively expected of ALM tools. However, there are things we do that start to diverge from other tools. Here is the first really large thing. You will notice that I've set this particular one up where I could go into, for example, Gantt roadmaps, again, Gantt enhancements, and I can see down to story and defect. However, we also have this idea, if I keep scrolling to the left, of what we call work streams. And work streams are collections and grouping of work that rides above the agile hierarchy. They're bigger, they're larger than the agile hierarchy. They represent maybe business units, business functions, maybe large OKR initiatives, things like that. And so you'll see the way that we've organized these inside of our own system. We have the very top level work streams that are keeping track of all the effort happening in our product division versus, for example, our revenue division. And product itself then breaks down into things like DevStride engineering, release management, documentation. And if I drop down there into DevStride engineering, I can then click into the modules workstream where I then begin that same agile hierarchy you just saw a second ago. So this lets me very flexibly and very capably build any map that makes sense for my business. And I can take that map and I can use that to not only organize things so they're quick to find and easy to gain context on why I'm working on a particular thing, but also each of these nodes in here serves as a roll-up node inside of our reporting engine. So if I go, for example, into product and I click on DevStride and I click on modules, and then I go, for example, to that same Gantt view, you'll see that it has a couple of stats here that show when I hover, or I can click on this little graph to see the detail on this. And what you'll see here is that 34 out of 34 items have been completed inside of the Gantt module, which means we have no outstanding work that's been committed in our Gantt module that isn't finished. And I can see that all the stories were completed in 93% of the estimated range, but the defects took me about 194% of my estimated range. So what this tells me here is that defects in the Gantt chart tend to be a little more complex than what you would expect to see, than what we expect. And so we need to go back in our inspect and adapt cycle, look at why did we underestimate these and how do we estimate them better in the future. So it's a really great way here at a very high level to just rapidly go in and see. So say, for example, our reporting engine. I could click right on this and see, 99% of all the ever planned items that have ever been planned are done. There's one story outstanding, and I can see that reporting tasks, we are extremely good at estimating. They're 99% and 101% to estimate, which is, very, very close. So reporting issues and reporting stories tend to be a lot more predictable for us than Gantt issues and Gantt stories. All right, so that's what this all is. It lets you build all this out. Now, there's a second capability that's built into this that makes it even more powerful than just the roll-up reports, which the roll-up reports are very powerful. We also have the ability at any point in this hierarchy to synchronize this map, this portfolio map, back against external systems. So I could, for example, be working in, let's say, Azure DevOps, and I may have epics and stories in Azure DevOps, which is kind of the top level in Azure. It only gives you epics. You can't really do portfolio management there. And I can click a button, a link, or I can turn on an automated link. There's 2 different ways to do it that automatically import this particular story this epic and all of these stories from ADO, and they become read-only in DevStride, where we clearly delineate for you this epic didn't originate in DevStride, but we are synchronizing it back to DevStride for the purposes of getting portfolio metrics. So one of DevStride's key value props is that it lets you build out the portfolio. Another piece is that it lets you report on any node in that portfolio. And then number 3, it allows you to import from various systems. So I might have 5 or 6 different ADO projects and a Jira project and 10 projects in ClickUp or Monday or whatever. And DevStride gives me one central home to pull all that data together and house it in a coherent portfolio. It lets me see what's happening across all of my programs, all of my teams, all of my products. So that's one of the first big value props, this portfolio management solution. Moving on beyond that then, once you have everything in a portfolio and you sort of mapped out hierarchically what sort of work is occurring, now you need to schedule that work and sequence that work. And that is where you then get into our boards. And what boards are in DevStride is they're Kanban boards, just like you would see in any other system, with a couple of again, extra capabilities added on. The first one is this. You'll see that right here, my boards can be housed in hierarchical folders. So for example, in our product division, you'll see if I click on product here, that now there are program increments inside of the product program, right? PI 7, PI 8, PI 9. And for those of you that don't know, a PI is basically like a 12-week cycle. And then multiple sprints will sit inside of that. I also then, at the product level, the program level, I have a program backlog, have a list of program capabilities, have a list of program modules, and I could open up, for example, the backlog, and I could see all the things that we are currently planning to do in this backlog right here. And so I'm able to run these free-form Kanban boards, but I'm also able down below here to establish in any one of these folders that I'm going to run a cyclical process at this level of the folder. So for example, the program here is going to be managed in program increments and PIs. So when I set this up, I come in here and I set it up to say, this is the product program, and these are the lanes that we use in the Kanbans inside of these cycles. And then I want it to go use a default schedule that we've called the product program schedule. And I'll show you how this cadence gets established here in just a second. So this is basically a home for everything, both backlogs, freeform Kanban boards, and cyclical planning work that's related to my program. And underneath this program now, I have a separate folder that is set up for my sprints. And you'll see that down below here, if I click out of the product program and I click down into the child sprints, you'll see that this now becomes a list of sprints. And these sprints, instead of being 12 weeks long, if I were to open one of these up, for example, you'll see that day 14 to 14, these are 2-week sprints. And that's by design, where we've set it up that you can have nested planning horizons. So you could have, for example, like a 3 PI cadence and then a 1 PI cadence that then breaks down into a sprint cadence. Or you could have a cadence that's like an annual planning cadence that breaks down into quarterly, that then breaks down into monthly, that breaks down into weekly. And all of that can be managed in a very organized fashion through this folder system, where I say, the program is running, it's running at PIs, its children are sprints, the sprints are running on a sprint cadence. And I could go as deep with that as I want. So it's also a very powerful way of you building the hierarchy of your planning and commitment horizons inside of your organization. Now, once you are at a particular planning horizon, so let's use our PI 9 here, I can open this up, I can say go, I can jump to it. Let's just go grab a marketing one, because I think it'll be a little bit different to look at. PI 9 for my marketing team and my go-to-market team. Click go, and now I'm immediately presented with the Kanban board here for the marketing team. There are different views of this. This is the standard card view that you're used to seeing from systems like Trello and Jira. There's also a row-based view, a table-based view, if that's the way you like to consume this data. And then there's also a 2-dimensional board view where you can say one of the data, if you have something like priority or assignee or something like that, can be your rows or columns. And what I've done here on this one is I've said, the rows are priority, low, normal, medium, high, and the columns here are the status of the thing inside the Kanban boards. And it gives me this layout to all the things that are happening in my go-to-market team. Now, if I were to bounce over here and wanted to see what's going on in my product program, I just click on product program and I click on PI 9. And boom, here's everything that's happening inside of my product program and all the big commitments that have been made by my product and engineering teams. And you'll notice that this board looks a lot like a PI planning board, and it has basically all the same capabilities of those sort of tools including that we show you right here what your dependencies are. We show you when there's a dependency in the system, and then I can click on that and it'll show which ones it depends on. And there's a very cool feature in here, which is you'll see this lane at the bottom isn't part of the regular lane. These are items that are brought in from external boards. We don't import them into this board. We simply show them here so I can see in a very succinct and clear way what dependencies exist for this program. So this program here has externalities, it has external dependencies, and I can see that really easily from the PI planning board. Now, once I'm in this board, this is great that we have this. But I also then, remember, have sprints that right underneath this. And these items, in our case, these are epics. These epics have stories and defects underneath them that are children of these. So I can open up any one of these. Let's take this one, for example. And I can say, click on the child items, and it will immediately show me all of the items in the Agile hierarchy that are underneath this. And I can see all the estimated time, the time spent, what the status they're in. And I could even click on this, for example, and jump right to the story. And you'll see that this one exists in sprint 9.1. It's in a sprint cycle. And I can go back and I can jump back to its parent. And I can see that now the parent, the epic, is set up in PI 9, which is at the PI level. So every 12 weeks. And so there's a real and coherent relationship between the epics and the stories, or you could have, for example, solution epics, or you could have OKRs or things like that that are higher level, that break down into smaller level, and you're able to do that topically, hierarchically here in the portfolio management tool through these work streams and the Agile hierarchy. You're also able to do that then on a sequential level, on a timing level, through the use of these boards and the hierarchy that is inside of these boards right here. So both topical hierarchy and time hierarchy that are all represented and fully unified together in the system. All right, now that gets you to a lot of what sort of Agile planning typically looks like. There's a lot of features I could highlight on this. In fact, let me do one really quickly just to highlight one extra thing here. You will notice that inside of this that we are doing aggregation statistics everywhere here. So I can, for example, when I'm coming in to plan my backlog, let's go grab, for example, what we are planning to do in PI 10 right now. So you see that I starred some of these. I've got my product program up here, so I've already started it. Let's just go jump right to PI 10. Go. And I can see right here in very short order if I want to. Let's go to this plain table view, or this view right here. Yeah, let's do the table view. With all the stuff that's in the epics that I think we're about to go adopt in PI 10, you'll see that I have a total of 1,241.3 hours, that plus or minus 246.7 through a PERT estimate, because we use PERT. Don't use points, that's why you don't see anything here. And at the moment, there's one team owner. This is my program manager who is currently assigned to review all of these things. So I can see, does this capacity generally make sense for the amount of team members that will be contributing later? And I can do the same thing over here if I want to, leave the program right here, back up a little bit and go back out. So here's the program, and I could drill down into its sprints. Okay, let's go drill down into the sprints. Now I'm in the sprints, and I can say, show me everything that we've committed to in sprint 9.5, which is my current sprint. And you'll see here I have 8 team members assigned, 270 hours worth of work, 139 that have already been logged thus far, 36 items. And I can do very quick, rapid, or I can do it by person, for example, right here, instead of doing it by priority. Let's just do it by assignee. And now I can see exactly who all has been assigned, and I can see how many tickets they have and how much time we estimate that's going to take them. And just make sure that the load that I'm assigning out to everyone makes sense, both at a program level, at a sprint level, at a solution level. So this is a really great way to plan and also balance out your capacity as well. All right, so that's, again, all of the things you normally think of with an Agile frame and an Agile hierarchy. However, we have the additional core value prop at DevStride of trying to support, as a first-class citizen, hybrid work styles, where I perhaps have some Agile programs going on internally, places where the commitments and the budgeting and all are truly Agile, and they're rolling, and we're making commitments, gradually refining them over time. But we also recognize and see in our customer base a significant number of commitments that happen where there's just a firm date. There's a milestone out there, it's contractually obligated, or maybe there's a statutory or regulatory requirement that you can't move. And it doesn't matter how agile the team is internally, there's still a very rigid deliverable that must be hit on a certain date. And that's where Gantt charts start to become really powerful. And Gantt charts are nothing new. But what we've done here is that our Gantt charts, our portfolio level Gantt charts. And so let me just sort of show what that means. When you come in here and you're looking at, a Gantt, I can say, for example, in this case, I've pulled in everything in my revenue team. Let's go grab the product team over here. Let's grab this guy. Okay, so this is the large initiative of Build DevStride. And this is, you'll see this is the exact Agile hierarchy that I was showing you earlier. See the modules with all the different module levels and the capabilities underneath those. This is everything I showed you earlier. So let's actually go pick up the Gantt. Remember I showed you earlier, Gantt roadmaps, Gantt scenarios. I can open Gantt roadmaps and I can see all the various epics that have been committed to. And I can go down to PI9 where we're currently working on some things. And I can see exactly what's in here. I can draw dependencies if I need to. I can come through here and I can say, hey, these things are linked. And I can push a date out if I want to. And it'll show me the offset. And then it'll, notice that it pushes its children. It'll push its, it'll also come back and push its dependencies, and it'll show you if anything now no longer is a rational dependency anymore. We also, inside of this tool, let you do things like scenario planning. So right here, I can come through and I can say, okay, here's one scenario. This is the base case. But what if I want to say, for example, PI9 Gantt to PI10? It actually doesn't get done until PI10. And I want to start recording this. Now I'm recording a variation in my Gantt chart, and I can come through here and I can say, what if this guy right here didn't get done until, for example, here. And you'll see that it shows me the offset. It shows me then that none of these items underneath fit anymore, because now my stories are planned at a time where my epic is not planned. And so it's giving me quite a bit of information in here and letting me rationalize sort of how my timeline is likely to play out when, again, I'm working towards relatively fixed milestones. A few capabilities that are in this that are extremely powerful. Not only am I able to do the dependencies like this, other tools like Jira and some others will allow you to draw dependencies. This makes it very quick because we have the entire portfolio. We understand everything that's been done across your whole portfolio. For me to come through and do things like, for example, let's say in this items section, I had this guy, and this was a dependency before this one could start. I could come through here and I could draw from this totally remote, team and dependency that this guy depends on this other guy. I come in here and I say, okay, this one right here is dependent on this one. It'll automatically raise this line as a red line to show me, hey, this is an irrational dependency. And then there's an additional data view in here that shows me which things are irrational in my date and dependencies, so that I understand, what is or isn't working correctly, and what about my plan is rational or is not rational. So that's some of what's going on in here. In addition to the Gantt chart, we also have the ability to do Agile reporting. Okay, and in Agile reporting here, this is where, okay, let's say that I'm leaving all of this, I'm trying to commit on to things, by date. And I'm going to go back over to here. I'm going to say, hey, I just want to run flow reports. That's what you're seeing right here is all these different flow reports that you would typically recommend in an Agile, programmer portfolio. And in this particular case, let's come through and let's say that I wanted to see, let's go, for example, look at our cycle time. Let's look at our cycle time for our epics. So I click on the cycle time report and I say, show me for the last, let's go in here, grab the product program. Let's say for PI8. Show me for PI8. All right. So we're in that same scenario. Show me all the epics and show me how long it took them to go from being new to being done, and what is sort of my time there is my cycle time. And you'll see that the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, we didn't get anything done. And we started knocking things out. The very first one was 412.75 hours to done. And then I keep moving through here. And then we had a couple that took a lot longer. And then that gives me sort of an average. And I could do the same thing and I could come through and say, okay, show me this instead of for just that quarter. Let's instead look at all the epics. And let's look at them. For example, let's say that I pick this for all of last year. and I just grab from January 23 all the way through December 31st of 23, apply the state range. And now you'll see a much smoother line because I'm no longer looking inside of a particular PI, I'm looking across multiple PIs. And I can see that on average, it takes us about 11 days, ticked up to right here, it looks like up to about 13 days. And then by Q4, we were running about 15 days or so, 15, 16 days here to address these epics. In my view, 16 days to sort of get to originally, once you start work on an epic, to completing it, it's pretty good. But of course, there's lots of different ways that you could go run these reports, and you can select which item types you want to target, and you can do things like, for example, another one that people really enjoy looking at and is very helpful would be, for example, a cumulative flow diagram. Let's pull this down, for example, product. Let's go to the sprints, and let's go grab like sprint 9.2, for example, select it, see all my defects and stories, and you'll see a perfect, cumulative flow diagram for what happened in this team day over day and which stories were there. I can then additionally, from here, I can click into the items view and I can see for each day what were all those items, and I can drill all the way in to say, here's all the lanes that we had. Let's open it up and see how many were still new, and I can see the actual list of all of the things that were new. And so we have quite a bit of granular, detailed, data underneath these reports that you can then also, you'll notice up here, that there are several places here where you can export. And so when you run an export on the data, it will then spit out the data in a CSV format that you can then take and input into a BI tool or Excel or anything you want to do for further refinement and visualization. We generally have the reports that you would expect to see, that how done is something, what's the trending progress on being done. So that's another one that's kind of interesting to look at. Let's look at this guy. I could say, for example, show me by epic. All right, I'm gonna apply the filter. So by epic, show me the count of completed items that was for, let's go last year. All right, let's turn off all my filters. Great. And now this is showing me the count of all epics in the system right here. Over the course of the year, how many do we know about? How many were done? And what you see here is that our team massively accelerated their ability to go through and get epics knocked out to the end of the year. That does expected because we grew our team quite a bit in the last year. But it's a great way to sort of filter down to anything. You can filter to any location in the map, for example. So what if I said, instead of by the type, let's say instead I wanted to do it by stories. I just want to see by story. All right. Show me every single thing. All right, here's every story in the system. And then show me for every story. I want to just filter that down to inside of product. Show me absolutely everything that was going on inside of, let's say, for example, the general boards capability, right? So the module of the boards, like across all capabilities, everything inside of boards. Apply the filter and show me exactly what was going on there. And here are all the stories that were available. And you see as we picked a little bit of work up here and there, worked on it, closed it right back out. So you'll see that we were doing a great job of staying ahead of these and staying on top of these right now. And I could just as easily say, okay, for the same module for boards for the same time period over the whole year, instead of stories, go show me the epics instead. Apply the filter, and there we are by epic count right there. So it's great. This is a pretty powerful tool, and it allows you to do a lot. Combined together, we now have the ability for you to map out your portfolio, plan all the work in your portfolio at various time horizons, measure that against fixed rigid dates with dependencies across team, across project, across, even across release train, and then run all of your flow metrics at any level of the portfolio. And all of that is sort of handled and natively available in the tool. Now, there are a lot of other things that we do that are a little more detailed, a little more specific. For example, there's an entire notification system in here where I can leave comments for people and they can, go read their comments and have live conversations. We have the ability to aggregate your work across multiple release trains, multiple products. If you happen to be a contributor that spends a lot of time, you're like a shared resource. We have that sort of capability. We have an incredibly powerful automation engine going on in here, which will say things like, for example, just automate our documentation for epics. Let's look at this one real quick. What this says is, for anytime a status changes from any status to done, and then I look at the parent hierarchy. The parent hierarchy is inside of DevStride Engineering. And if the tag contains roadmap, then I want to create a new work item that is for product review. I want to create it as type general, and I want to assign it out to Noar Sahiti, who is our triage for documentation. And so there's a very powerful engine in here as well to do rules and automations to enforce consistent practices. But generally, one more thing that I will also show really quickly. Let me bounce to a different, a slightly different view. Let's go grab, for example, in our product group. I can come in here to any one of these things that actually sit at a capability level. Let's go back up here, grab all the capabilities. And you will also see that inside of here that I can come through and I can set up multiple custom fields that allow me to do things like a RICE or a WSGIF score for any capability in the system. So let me actually quickly highlight that for you. Right here, you'll see, for example, I can go in here to custom fields, and I can set this up, and I could say, for example, create, like for RICE, I could do like the reach. So let's do this as like a whole number. I'll call it reach. Description, minimum value is 1, maximum value is 5 or 10, depending on how you want to calculate it. And it'll be called reach, create a whole number field, right? And I would say, impact, whole number field, et cetera, et cetera. I won't do it all together here while we're on this demo, but you can build up a bunch of these, and then you can set one of these up to be a calculated value that then takes this number, runs the calculation, spits that out. Now, if I go in here to my capabilities, see how they're currently using product, I can instead flip these to a new one that says, we'll call this RICE. And I'll take my reach and my impact, I'll put them in the collection. Hey, this collection is RICE collection, and I'll flip my capabilities over to using RICE. And now these are the custom fields that my capabilities have, so that if I come over here to this board again, you'll see that now there's reach right there in the list, and impact right there in the list, and I could set these up. I could type in like, this is a 4, this one is an 8. And right here in the same system where I'm managing all of my epics and tasks and all the sort of agile things, I can also manage things like the product score right in these views as well. So another key capability that DevStride is bringing in is the ability to start folding in your actual product team into the same tool. So you don't need a tool like AHA or something as an external tool. Those things can be done directly in DevStride, and everything talks to itself. So that's another important point to probably mention there. All right, so that's pretty well the system at a high level. Again, we have work streams for the portfolio view, which have configurable agile hierarchy that itself can be turned around and wrapped in work streams that give you even greater organizational capacity above the agile hierarchy. Everything can be planned into boards, and these boards are nestable in folders infinitely. So I can have, like, for example, an enterprise that goes down to a solution, that goes to a program, that goes to a sprint. And at every level of those, I can have any number of Kanbans that do things like a backlog or an issue, listing or something like that. That's an evergreen, always running Kanban. Or I can set up a series of repeating cycles, and I can do both at the same time. And this series of repeating cycles could be, for example, a program increment or a 3PI plan, or it can be be sprints, whatever it needs to be, where you're repeating over and over again. I can jump into any one of those cycles and view that then as a board that is either in a one-dimensional board here, a list view, or a two-dimensional board here that lets me plan. I can take all of that effort, I can spit it back out to a Gantt chart that lets me articulate what's happening inside of all of my Agile programs. And I'm able to draw dependencies and clearly see how the long pole in the tent is affected, and any changes that come down, and I can communicate and share this with the customer so they have confidence around like a rigid date. And then I can internally measure everything against my Agile flow metrics here, and I can come through and I can just sort of show, how are we performing and how do we optimize for flow. All of that is backed by an automation engine that then allows me to say, if X, then Y, and those things can happen consistently to speed you up dramatically. And there's a very, very robust settings engine in here for me to go through and set up things like, what estimation ranges and effort points and all those things do I want to use inside of my system. So thanks a lot for taking the time to look at this. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, Phil at devstride.com. and I am very happy to answer those questions. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.